Hi, everybody. It's Craig. Welcome to Cutting the Crap with Shap. Thank you so much for checking out my podcast. If you get a chance, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing. I'm on YouTube and Spotify. That's how we grow the channel. It's also how you get involved. And of course, I am blessed to be here with Miss Judy Mabone. So I have known Judy for, and she might correct me, but I believe are you 27 or 28?
I'm 28. Ooh.
28. So I have known Judy for about 15 years. I first met Judy, I was a middle school track coach, and Judy came out for track in seventh grade. And I'm sure she could touch on some of that stuff. I don't want to go too deep into it, but ran track at middle school. And then I was blessed to have her as a cross country runner when I was coaching at William Tennant. Um, she was a two-time state qualifier, Division One athlete at American University, and just an unbelievable person. Will share just so many things that people her age will probably never experience, but will also bring a very positive light to things. So, with all that stuff out of the way, Doctor, how we doing?
Oh my gosh. I'm tired. It's been a year. It has been a year. I tell people that I am not lacking blessings, but I'm definitely lacking sleep lately.
Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are, what you're about, and anything else you'd like to say?
Sure. Yeah, so I like to define myself as an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and a general just like enthusiast of the things around me. I believe in radical generosity, being kind to others, and looking for the best in every situation. So my story kind of starts with a diagnosis at a really young age of heart disease, and that has been the catalyst for the way that I've lived my life over the course of the last 12 years. I have been working and living in DC, but that is about to change because I'm headed to the University of Michigan's business school this fall. And so I've spent the last year working full time, applying to school, and serving in the DC community as Miss District of Columbia in the Miss America opportunity. And so kind of like a salad in a way where you have like a lot of different pieces, but everything kind of comes together to form one really good whole. That's kind of how I view myself, as more of like a salad than a soup. Um, yeah, so it's just really busy, really busy. Can't stress that enough, but very grateful for the very interesting paths that my life has taken me.
Yeah, that's a great intro. And of course, Judy is being rather humble because I think that when you think about somebody who's 28 years of age and has done all that she has done, it is amazing. And the thing that is probably most, I guess for me, I've always been a doer. I've always been somebody who's putting myself out there. I just believe in that. And I don't want to speak for Judy. I'll let her kind of toot her own horn, which she probably won't do that well, but I'll let her do it. Um, I want you to speak about kind of your journey from being diagnosed with heart disease and basically just going through that, running, going to college, and then through your DC experience, your Miss District of Columbia experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, probably better than anybody that when I was, in that 15, 16-year-old kind of age range, I was super just competitive. Like I was so
Mhm.
fixated on college, if you remember, like I was so
Yep,
obsessed with like,
Princeton.
yes, oh my gosh, Princeton was like my dream. And I was running and eating well and doing all the little things I could do to get myself into a position where I could find myself recruited to that program so that I could go to
Yep,
that school. And so I was very type A, and I was very, fixated on my next thing and my next goal, to the point that I think that I sacrificed a lot of the joy that comes with that part of one's life. The joy of being like a young teenager. And so when I was diagnosed with heart disease, after surviving 6 heart attacks in a 2-year span, I went from being like very on top of the world and feeling like everything was going my way, and honestly having like a lot of pride in that, too much pride, I would say, to being in a place where I didn't even know if I was going to wake up the next night every time I went to bed. And so that experience kind of led me to this place where I thought, if this is the end of my life, I want to feel like I've lived it. And I was lying in bed after a procedure, and I just remember thinking, like, all I do is run and go to school and study and do like a billion clubs and build my resume. But I don't have a lot of memories. I don't have a lot of like joy aside from those things. And that's not what life is supposed to be. Life can't always be progress, and life can't always just be like checking off the next, thing on your list of accomplishments. And so I wrote this bucket list that hangs in my mom's house still, like in my childhood bedroom. And I just started writing like a bunch of like weird, nuanced, like niche things that I thought would be fun to just kind of go for if I'm at the end of my life. And one of those things was competing at Miss America because, I'd watched it on TV. I grew up in a military family, like a single parent household. Like that was not something that really seemed like an attainable goal. But I thought like, oh, how funny would that be if I did a pageant like Miss Congeniality, like haha. And so when I ended up at American University, I was running Division 1, but I was still trying to figure out how to manage my condition. I was taking a medication that made me very, very drowsy. My body had changed a lot because I wasn't running as much as I had been in years previous. And I just remember I got this email and it was like, Miss DC needs contestants. And so I thought, here's my chance. Like, I'll just, kind of go for it and see what happens. And I ended up going out for it. I made one friend. It was the girl who won. And that year, during her year of service as Miss DC, her brother died in a tragic helicopter crash off the coast of Hawaii. He was a Marine. And I saw how the organization rallied around her and provided her with this community and support. And I thought, that is exactly what I need. And so I kind of just kept going back. And then I kind of fell in love with the process and the program and the opportunities that came out of it. And so after 9 years and 7 competitions, I ended up winning this past year as Miss DC 2023. And that was really a big catalyst for a lot of healing for me personally, because the work that I did centered around advancing heart health equity and having those conversations and talking about something that I was so embarrassed by, 12 years ago, 13 years ago almost, when I got this diagnosis. That was really healing in ways that I just hadn't predicted.
Wow. Yeah. And I think the thing that struck me too is one thing everybody about Judy is she's not a quitter. Like I myself am always amazed at how people deal with adversity. You know, I myself I've had adversity. I've lost both of my parents at a relatively young age. Obviously things with work and a million things. I mean, obviously I'm 58, so there's going to be adversity that happens over life. And I guess I've always thought about it like, how do you deal with adversity when it's there? Because it's easy to talk about it. Like people say, "Oh, just deal with it," and that's such a really like a half-hearted answer because you don't know how to deal with adversity till adversity hits you over the head.
Mm.
And there are different levels of adversity. Like adversity is not just it's a term, but I always think of it like when I lost my mother. Obviously, that's an incredibly sad situation, and you deal with it. And then I lost my father, and you deal with it. But those things are life-changing events, and they help or hurt, depending on your perspective, how you move forward. And one of the things that I think really impresses me about you is obviously, for people who don't know, I was coaching Judy when she had heart disease. It kind of came on fast. We didn't really know what was going on. It came on. And I remember visiting her in the hospital. You know, those are so many opportunities. Like for people that are young watching this, well, not enough. You don't have to be young, but people that are young, like think about somebody who's a teenager who's going through that, and how easy it would have been to just quit. I call it
Yeah.
the woe is me effect.
Mm.
Like woe is, and we all have that at times. If somebody says they don't, they're just lying. Everybody has that at times, but I think it's what happens after you initially have it, where do you go? Do you want to mention that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that there is a necessity to grieve when things happen to you. I will say that I did not grieve what happened to me until this past year. I don't think that that was necessarily a healthy thing in retrospect, but my fixation and my goal was to get to school and be able to utilize running as a vehicle to help pay for that education because I just knew that I couldn't get that kind of financial support from my family. And so for me, I think I just kind of like put the grief aspect of it on the back burner out of a necessity to make this work because I needed to still fund that education or I wasn't going to be able to go to school. Um, so there is a necessity to grieve when bad things happen to you. And I think there's a lot of value in that. But then you have to also remember that the world doesn't stop turning just because your world got flipped upside down. And people's lives are still going to be changing around you. Like the world is still going to progress. Like things are still going to be happening. And you can either decide to get back up and join in that rotation, or you can kind of sit stagnant and watch life pass you by. And when I got my second and my third and my fourth, and honestly at this point, what like my sixth chance at life, I realized that time is so short and so valuable. And so the more time you spend, in that grief period, like spend the time that you need. But if you get into a habit of just kind of like sitting there and sulking, you're just losing more time. And time is the most valuable thing that we have. And it's also one of the most finite things that we have. And so I think that it's just really important to remember that there is value in grieving bad things that happen to you or sad things that happen to you or disappointments or whatever. Grief can manifest in a lot of ways. But there's also a necessity to get back up and give yourself the ability to try again, to find a new dream, to pivot, to start something new. Because at that point, the only thing that's keeping you from living a life is yourself.
Hmm, very poignant. But also, I think, and I've said this, I've had other guests on, and I've said this, and maybe you can touch on this a little bit. I think when I hear Judy say that, and I'm going to push back a little bit,
Yeah.
I think it's. I had just had this conversation with somebody else on the podcast with me. Would you say that you are a glass mostly full person?
I think I'm glass neutral.
Okay.
I think I'm like, there's a glass, and I can either like decide that it's going to be half full or I can decide that it's going to be half empty. I've definitely done both. But I think that I view it as like more of a neutral state where it's like, okay, if I can't control, other factors, what are the things that I can control?
Hmm.
And those things that I can control are what I'm going to fixate on. Because otherwise, it's like, why do we worry about things that haven't even happened yet? Or why do we
Wow.
get frustrated about things that we can't even impact? Like, I'm very realistic, I think, and I'm very like logical. I'm not necessarily super emotional when it comes to trauma or like traumatic events. I think that's like a coping mechanism, honestly, at this point. But I just view it as if you can't fix it, then why are you stressed about it? Like if it's not something that is in your control, getting upset about something before it happens is just letting yourself be disappointed twice.
Right. And I'll just simply say that's easy. That's okay. So everything you said makes perfect sense, right?
Mhm.
For somebody who thinks it makes perfect sense.
Right. I wasn't always like that. But I think that one, I just appreciate life differently because I know what it's like to feel like you're going to lose it. But two, I have this mantra that I learned from one of my mentors, and admittedly, she learned it from a bumper sticker, but it is absolutely like the thing that I kind of shape my perspective around. And that is that the world is run by the people who show up.
Oh, mhm.
Somebody's always smarter, better looking, funnier, more qualified, wealthier, like whatever. But if you're the one who showed up, like you're the one who's going to be making the decisions that impact, whatever that thing is. And so for me, as long as I keep showing up, I'm like, well, there might be somebody who's better for this thing than I am, but I'm the one who's here. So I'm
Mm.
going to, control whatever factors I can control. And so, yeah, it's hard to like start shaping yourself and shifting into that mindset. But once you do, it kind of makes you feel like you're limitless. Because if you think you want to do something, who's to say you can't? You can like fail at it 1,000 times. Like you can lose Miss DC 6 times like I did and still believe on that seventh time, like, yeah, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I win this year? Like, of course it could be me. Like, I'm going to show up. Or I could have been like, well, I lost 6 times, so I'm going to lose the seventh time, so I'm not even going to bother. And then now you're limiting yourself. So I just genuinely believe that I can do anything because I believe that I'll show up because I know that I consistently show up all the time. Uh,
When somebody says they lost something or it's a failure, failing to me is a word that doesn't make sense, because if you never tried to win Miss DC, right, then you never tried it. You didn't fail, you didn't lose, you just didn't try. When you go for Miss DC and you don't win, you don't lose. It just didn't work out exactly as you had planned the first time.
that's
So
true.
what happens? You try it again, right?
Yep.
And then it doesn't work out exactly as you hoped. And then you try it again. Now, at some point, you could say after the fifth or sixth time, you know what? I've given this my best shot. And this is how I view things. You've given it your best shot. And you know what? I want everybody to listen, because this is the glass half full. If I'm in Judy's situation, I'm trying out for Mr. America or something, which I'm way too old for,
I
by the
would
way.
like to see that.
If I'm trying, like, this is simple. I know it's just kind of semantics and words, but it really is true of how we think about things, how we kind of get it involved in our brain. To me, showing up, as you said it, is the most critical thing. Now, after you show up, you got to decide whether you're going to keep showing up.
That's true.
That is what's very hard for people, because the human brain, I kind of see it that if it didn't work, well, then I have to figure out why it didn't work as I would have hoped it did. Sometimes it just doesn't work for no
Yes.
reason.
A lot of the time.
Right.
I can't think of anything in my life that has gone exactly the way that I thought it would. Like, I really can't. I can't think of a single
Can I tell?
scenario where something has worked out the way that I expected it to or had hoped it to.
Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah.
So I remember in high school, Judy had mentioned wanting to go to Princeton, and I don't remember all of our talks. I mean, it's been a pretty long time, but I do know at multiple times I would say, no matter what happens, it's okay. It will work itself out. And no, Shap, you don't understand. I've got to go there, and that's where I'm going. And deep inside of me, I wanted to say, stop. I didn't say that because you were young and impressionable, and I didn't want to blow you up there. But I was also thinking, like, you're throwing all your eggs in this one basket. And first of all, that's just toxic. And this is for everybody. I don't ever believe that you should ever throw all your eggs in one basket. I believe you can have a lot of eggs in a basket, but you never want to have them all there, because then if it works, this is important. If it works, that's great. But then you have a tendency to put your eggs in another basket.
Mm-hmm.
And sooner or later, the eggs are going to crack. They might not crack initially, but they will. And if somebody wants to say, God, Shap, you're cynical. No, that's not being, that's the realist in me. Is that
Yeah.
at some point, things are not going to work out exactly as you would have hoped they do. And this goes for anybody. I don't care if you're a gazillionaire. It works for anybody. There's going to be life things that happen that crack an egg that wasn't cracked. And if all of them are there, and that's kind of what I remember. I remember it was like May. You're saying I hear the decision on like May 15th, and make sure you're here, Shap, and don't go home. And I always remember that because I was thinking like, man, you're putting all your eggs in this like one basket, and like, who cares? And of course it's tough because for me, I'd be like, well, if it's not there, it'll be someplace else, right? So
Yeah.
that's just something I always think about. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think that, that disappointment was in a lot of ways a really, really good thing for me because I feel very lucky that I've learned a lot of these big life lessons so young because I would have rather been heartbroken and disappointed and figured out that you can't just like have one dream at 16 than 26 or 36 or 46 or whenever. Like, I feel very lucky that like I've been able to kind of like reframe my life because I learned that really early. And you're right. I no longer am like, okay, I have to do this one thing or else my world is coming to an end. Now I'm much more fluid where it's like, I'm like recruiting for internships for business school right now. And it's like, okay, I have this long term aspiration of becoming the CEO of the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee. Like,
yep.
that is like my dream job. That's my dream situation. But I would also be really happy at a national governing body of sport, or I'd also be really happy at an athletic wear company, or, working in sustainability, or like doing 1,000 other things. And I think that it's okay to have like one really specific goal because if you're really specific about what your asks are and you're really intentional about where you're trying to be, the opportunities that come up will tend to kind of like align with where your trajectory is. But right now, as I'm recruiting for, internships for next summer, I'm like looking at CPG, I'm looking at finance, I'm looking at, retail, I'm looking at so many different things because I understand now that you can plan as much as you want, but life typically does not go according to those plans. And so it's good to be intentional, but also really important to be flexible. And so I'm really happy that, I had that disappointment with Princeton because one, I think I would have gone crazy if I lived that close to home. And two, I know that ending up in DC was so much a part of my story and has changed my life in so many ways that just I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so things worked out exactly as they needed to. I just didn't know that at 16.
Hmm. I love that. That's a great way to say that. They worked out as they needed to. When I changed majors and I became a health and physical education major or exercise science major, um, I started teaching, and I had a difficult situation teaching initially. I was still young. I didn't really understand all the challenges of teaching. And then I left teaching and was in business. And I was working in the business world, making a lot of money, having a lot of success, but hating it. And at that moment, I remember talking to my parents, saying to them, I have this business opportunity that could be incredibly lucrative. And my dad and my mom were like, well, are you happy? I'm like, hell no. Who's happy? I'm working 70 hours a week. And they're like, to their credit, they're no longer here, obviously. To their credit, they were like, well, you really want to be happy. And it was hard recognizing that in that moment because I was making a lot of money and getting a lot of praise from the owner of the company. And I had to put my ego to the side because it felt good when somebody is telling you, oh my God, you're amazing at this, you're so good. But I wasn't happy. And that decision to get back in education led to me meeting my wife, having my kids, meeting Judy, coaching, having this podcast. So when people talk about having a plan, I do believe it is critical to have a plan.
Agreed.
I do really believe that. I think if you're always winging it, you take yourself out of the mix. There's too many
Agreed.
opportunities for things not to work. Notice I didn't say fail. I said there's too many opportunities for things not to work because you're all over the place. But your plan is always in pencil. It's never in ink. It's in pencil, so you can erase something that doesn't work, fix something that maybe needs to be improved upon, but there's always the ability to make change. And I think what happens for many people is they get fixated. I got to do this, and I have to do this. And if I don't do this, it defines me as a failure.
Mm.
What happens is I don't believe you should ever get full of yourself. I think it is very important to feel good about yourself. That's different. Feel good about yourself. Don't get full of yourself. They're very different. I always say to students, confidence is when you know you're good at something. Arrogance is when everybody else does.
Mm.
And
My last year I was great. Yeah.
right, so you just own it. You just own it. Like you said, yeah, my last year was great. Just own that. You're not bragging about it. I'm asking you a question. And that's something that people often struggle with. They are so easily apt to say everything they suck at, but can't say one thing they're really good at.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, and I've kind of figured out, as I was applying to school and as I'm applying to internships and jobs right now, it's like you have to be your own best advocate. Like if you don't believe that you are competent, that you are capable, that you can do these things, why would anybody else believe that you can do these things? And so nobody has to believe in you more than you do. Because if you don't, like nobody else on this earth is going to be telling you what you need to be telling yourself, which is that you are capable of doing all the things that you want to do with enough effort and a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And I believe that. I mean, I feel very like fortunate. Like I have great parents. Like they told me from a young age, like I was limitless, that I could do whatever I wanted to do.
Hmm.
And I just kind of like believe that. And so for people who like maybe didn't have that, or people who maybe are always hearing that they're doing something wrong and that they're not enough or whatever, okay, somebody else says that about you. But what do you say about yourself? You have the ability to control the conversation that happens in your own head. You have the ability to control the way in which you view yourself, the way that you talk about yourself. And so if you look in the mirror every day and you point out your flaws, like, okay, but like everybody else in the world can do that for you. So I choose to look in the mirror and say, wow, I love this about me. Like, I was a runner. I'm still a runner, just not like competitively anymore. And there's the culture of like lighter is faster. And I was always like a muscular, like kind of stocky kid. Like I was always like, you know, denser than the other distance runners. Like I'm 5'3", like I was running those hills. You can tell, like my legs show it. And so I had a lot of like body image struggles. And I kind of just got to the point where I was like, okay, I don't look like the other girls towing the line for this race, but I beat all the other girls towing the line for this race. So I'm so grateful that I have a body that can run, sub 5 minutes in the mile. Or I'm so grateful that I can walk for a really long distance and not get tired. Or I'm so grateful like my eyesight is clear so I can read the books that I love. Like you don't have to change your view and be like, I love myself overnight. Like that's not sustainable. Like that's not believable. We all have insecurities, but you can start to appreciate certain things. And slowly that can kind of manifest into more self love. And that self love manifests into positivity, which helps you get to a point where you just start to believe in yourself and what you're capable of. And so that's always my recommendation to people is like, okay, if you aren't talking positively to yourself every day, like I no longer say like, sorry, I'm an idiot if I mess up. Like I used to be like, oh, I'm such an idiot, sorry. Like, oh, I'm so dumb. Like I don't say that anymore because I'm not dumb. I'm not an idiot. And I don't want to ever speak about myself in a way that doesn't reflect the way that I view myself or doesn't reflect the way that I want people to view me. And so I don't say like, oh, sorry, I'm an idiot. I say my mistake. Or I say, let me fix that. Like you can still acknowledge shortcomings without being self deprecating. And I think that that self deprecating culture that we all kind of live in, where it's like cool or like in vogue to belittle yourself, to make yourself seem more humble or make yourself smaller, to make yourself more palatable for the people around you, like that has become a thing. And I've had to start teaching myself to unlearn that because I'm not dumb. So why do I say, oh, sorry, I'm dumb, like when I make a mistake? Because I'm not. And I'm not going to diminish myself anymore. Because that diminishing talk leads to, it starts to manifest as believing that you can't do things that you can do.
Wow. That was pretty freaking powerful.
We're just riffing here, man. We're just chatting. But like, it's like, I don't know how we got to this place as a culture where it's like it's considered humility to berate yourself. Like that's not what humility is. Humility is, like you said, confidence, being confident, but knowing that you don't have to go around like bragging about your accomplishments to other people. Like let the work speak for itself. That's humility. Berating yourself and belittling yourself and being self-deprecating isn't humility, that's humiliating. And I just want to get away from that. And so I'm really trying to like get away from that in my own life.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm trying to frame all the stuff you said. You got a lot of stuff to unpack there. I'm trying to think about it. Hmm. I guess one of the things that I would say to that is there's three things I do every morning. I've done them for years. Uh, habit stacking, I call it. Yeah, I don't call it habit stacking. It's called habit stacking. There's three things that I do. I've done them for years. Number one, when I wake up in the morning, I always do 5 or 10 minutes of stretching every morning, no matter what. Doesn't matter whether it's a work day or nothing. I just do it. The second thing I do is every morning I have either an apple or banana or yogurt or some combination of the three every morning. And the third thing, and this is something that what Judy was talking about, and I've done it for years. I could actually add a fourth thing, and maybe I will. The third thing I do is before I leave the house on any day, I always think of something positive about myself and something I'll do that day. Every day. I don't leave the house without thinking of that. And sometimes it can be something really small, like, wow, it's a beautiful day. I can't wait to go out for a walk. Sometimes it can be something like, oh, I'm excited for this lesson I'm going to be teaching. Sometimes it could be, I can't wait to squat today. It can be lots of things. I can't keep track of them all. And the fourth thing, and I don't say that I always do this, but I do it a lot, is whenever I have an opportunity to hold a door or greet somebody, I do it. And those are things where they don't take a lot of effort. Like I think what happens with a lot of people, and this goes back to like the humiliation piece, which of course is, to me, society looks at this like, oh my God, look at that person. Oh, they feel so bad. Well, stop freaking feeling bad. I always say, get over yourself. I said that to you years
Oh
ago.
yeah,
Yeah, get
many
over.
times.
Yeah. And people will look at that maybe in a negative way, but it's not. It's like, get over yourself. Like nobody cares.
Yeah,
Like, and again, when I say nobody cares, I don't mean in the sense of nobody. I mean, obviously, I care deeply about Judy, so that's not the point. The point is that people tend to gravitate to when other people are struggling. Look at that person, and that's kind of like a societal thing. When, on the other hand, you know, people get jealous if somebody does something well, or I wish I could do that. Oh my God, I can't do that. No, stop yourself. Just stop. Like, take control of your life. Now, again, that's not easy to do. I think one of the you said a lot of really powerful things, and I think the thing that I'm most caught up on is I'm not dumb. That is a mindset. Simple as that. It's a mindset. Is it easy to change? No. It's not easy to change, depending on where you're starting from. I think it's easier to change if you're already starting from a place of being self-assured, self-aware, self-confident. It's very
yeah,
hard to change if you don't have any of those things yet.
true.
And the key is yet.
Well, I tell people because I've been trying to get my friends, my close community, to also reframe the way that they talk about themselves. And so if my friend says to me like, I'm an idiot, or I look gross today, I'll say, whoa, don't talk about my friend like that. And then they're like, weird that you just framed it that way. Because if somebody else said that about my best friend Caroline, I would be like, oh no, like we're not going to speak about her that way. So why would I let Caroline talk about Caroline like that? I won't. And so I think that's a good place to start for people who don't necessarily like, who this doesn't come easily to, is think about your child, think about your partner, think about your best friend, whoever you love, your mother. Nobody talks about my mama. You understand? So think of like somebody close to you. And if you would not allow someone to say that thing to them, why would you say it to yourself? And so that's kind of how I started, is it was like, I'm not dumb, because I would never allow someone to speak to my mom that way and tell her that she is. So therefore, I'm not going to speak to myself that way. And so I don't talk negatively about myself anymore, because I don't want people to talk negatively about my friends. And I'm now my own friend. And I'm going to be kind to myself and give myself the same grace that I give other people. And so I think you have to kind of think of it as like, almost remove yourself from the situation and be a third party looking in and being like, would I let someone speak this way about my friend to me? If the answer is no, then reframe it. I'm not dumb. I just made a mistake. Mistakes are normal. We make a billion of them every day. That's why we all need grace. And so I'm not dumb. I just made a mistake. Reshaping that and thinking of it through the lens of, I won't let someone talk to someone I love this way. Therefore, I won't speak to myself that way.
I love that. Yeah, well, the reframing is something that you can read about in hundreds of books. People always talk about reframing how you think,
Yes.
reframing your emotions. But I love the idea of the third person with the friend. I've never heard of that, and I really like that. I think that can be something that's really powerful. One of the things that I'll often say is, I will say that I am my harshest critic, but also my best supporter. I am somebody who demands excellence of myself in everything that I do. But I'm also somebody who gives myself credit when something goes well. I'm not somebody who is self-defeating, like, and it's very easy to say, well, this didn't work and I'm a failure. And when something does work, I'll say, well, that was luck. That makes me laugh. Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean it was luck? Like, you winning Miss DC had nothing to do with luck.
No.
It had everything to do with perseverance and persistence.
Preparation.
Yep, practice.
And yeah, probably some prayer up in there. I won't
Mm-hmm.
lie. Yeah, just, it wasn't luck. It was, so not everyone is, religious. I am. And so for me, I always say, like, you should pray for the things that you want, pray for the goals that you have. I always say, like, I want the desires of my heart to, like, align with, like, my God's will for my life. For other people, that might be like, I want for me what the universe has for me, right? Like the equivalent of that. And so I, like, prayed that often, was like, I want the desires of my life to align with what the will that God has for my life is. But I'm also going to prepare for it. I'm also going to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that if this thing comes to me, I'm ready to take it and run with it. And so there's no luck about it. If I say, I recently signed up for the Ann Arbor Marathon because I want to stay fit while I'm in school. And I wanted like another goal to look forward to outside of just my academic career. And so I want to try to qualify for the Boston Marathon. But if I pray that I qualify for the Boston Marathon, but I don't go out and hit my mileage and do my workouts and train for it, I'm not going to get lucky and run sub 3.5 hours in Ann Arbor in October. So it's like prayer and preparation. It's, you know, meditation and the mechanics of getting something done. And so there's no luck involved. It's just, did you or didn't you prepare? And was this or wasn't this for you?
Yeah, and
That's it.
that goes back to the failure piece.
Yeah.
You know, like to me, and you touched on it beautifully. You're so articulate. It's amazing just listening to
Thanks.
when
It's
you.
that public school education. Shout out to WCHS.
Okay, I won't comment on that, but I'll let that I'll let that go. You can hope, but if you don't run, you're not running the marathon.
Right.
It's all about doing your part. Do your part to the best of your ability, and then do some prayer, do some self-reflection, do all those other things that make you feel good. But they are not going to translate to X happening if you don't do the work for X to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think they go hand in hand. I think that, for me, praying and like talking to God about like what my goals are and also doing the tangible things that I need to do to get closer to that goal, to prepare for that, thing. I think that goes hand in hand. And I think a lot of people are really good at like the mindset, like, I want this thing. But the actual action of getting yourself into a position where like that's attainable is where people fall off because that's hard. It's hard to put yourself in a position where like you're uncomfortable because it's really hard to get to a goal without being a little uncomfortable. Like I've never had a goal that didn't require me to sacrifice and that didn't require me to get a little bit uncomfortable. And that's a lot of like people's hang up or hesitation is like, we don't want to feel uncomfortable. But everything that you want is on the other side of some type of discomfort, whether it's sacrificing time with your friends because you want to go become Miss DC and you have to go train and you have to go practice and you have to go out and serve in the community and do all these things when your schedule is really busy. Or if it's, you want to run a marathon, so you got to sacrifice those couple hours every Saturday morning and get out of bed early before the sun comes out in the heat. Like, you're going to have to get uncomfortable. Doesn't matter what it is that you want. And that's people's hang up is a lot of people are like, I know what I want, but they don't want to get uncomfortable to go get it. And I can't think of a single goal that comes without some type of discomfort. You have to do hard things to get the outcomes that you desire.
Like, I believe that if I make the attempt to do the right thing most of the time, good things will happen. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes. But if you try to do the right thing most of the time and you have a strong belief system, good things happen. With that said, you have to do the work to make them happen. And it's just kind of just repeating what you're saying. Like you said, they go hand in hand.
Yes.
They do go hand in hand. But I do this, I say do you know the pizza analogy? I don't know if I ever told you that.
The pizza analogy.
Yeah, I don't think you, I'll throw this out to you. So you order a pizza, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Got it? It's got
Got
it's got 4 slices. So it doesn't have 8, it has 4. When the pizza delivery person comes to your house and you're about to pay them, you take a second and say, "Oh, let me look at the pizza to make sure it's what I ordered." You open the box and one of the slices of pizza is missing. Would you buy the pizza?
No, because I don't want people to touch my food. That's gross. No, I'm so serious. No, I'm weird about food.
Yeah.
I'm weird about food.
That wasn't where I was going, but okay. So you wouldn't buy the pizza, right?
No, certainly
Okay.
not.
Okay. Do you know what the 4 slices of pizza are?
You're going to tell me.
Do you want to guess?
No, you can tell me.
Okay, so, and this can tie into your running or your Miss DC or whatever it is. Got it?
Got it.
So the 4 slices of pizza, and these relate to wellness, but I can relate them to anything. Number 1 is the food that you eat. Number 2 is how much movement you get in your life. Number 3 is how much rest you get. And number 4 is your attitude. If any one of those slices of pizza is missing, something else will suffer. It might not suffer equally, but it will suffer. And I'll give you an example. Is you want to run a marathon.
Mhm.
If you train well and you eat well and you have a positive attitude, but you don't get enough rest and you're tired constantly, it will affect how you train and your attitude.
Yes.
If you train well and you rest and you have a good attitude, but you eat horribly, that will affect how you perform. If you eat, rest, and have a good attitude, but don't train, you won't be able to race. All four of those pieces, they are all necessary. They're not all equal all the time, but they're all necessary. And I will relate that to so much of life in general. And I can change the slices to anything, to any four slices you want to change them to. We can change it to hope, effort, attitude, work. You can change it to anything. If one of those things is missing, then something is going to suffer.
Yeah. Agreed.
Ultimately, all matter. The point is that for everybody watching, is everything we do matters. It is so hard for people to recognize. It is not the one big thing. So I'll say, oh my God, Judy is Miss DC. My God, that's amazing. You're so missing the point. That's the end game.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's Miss DC. She's a Division I runner. She's getting her MBA. Yeah. What, those things just magically pop out of the air? You gotta
Right.
put the work in for those things to happen. And then it's the other things that you talked about: belief, confidence, not berating your friend who happens to be you. Those are things that matter.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head.
I don't know, maybe.
I think you did. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's easy to see the outcomes and assume that things just happen for people, assume that things just kind of like snap together. I've been told before, oh, you always get what you want. And
Ooh,
I
I
was
hate that.
thinking, no, I don't. I typically actually don't land with what I want. What I want is to be on a yacht in Croatia with somebody else's money. What I have is a lot of grit, a lot of drive, and a relentlessness to believe that I am capable of doing the things that I want to do and creating the impact that I want to create. And so that has led me to pursue paths and try new things and believe that those things could work out for me. Maybe not exactly the ways that I expected them to, but in ways that are beneficial to me and the people around me. And so this idea that like things just happen to people isn't true. And I think that what something that's been hard for me over the years is that I've been met with some people who are like, oh, you always get what you want. And for every accomplishment, there's like 27 things that didn't go right. There's like 29 rejections. There's like 50 no's. And so for every door that opens, there's at least 10 that didn't. And I think that that's the part that people don't necessarily see is the work and the rejection and the resilience piece that comes with that, that allows you to get to a place where you can be like, yeah, like I'm doing these things, but I also tried 100 other things that didn't work out. But it's easy to see the outcome and be like, must be nice. But it's hard to stomach the energy and the effort that actually leads to those outcomes.
And you know what? I've said to people before. So one thing people don't know, like, well, if you don't know about me, I don't take any disrespect. Um, this is one thing about me. I don't let anybody disrespect me. I really don't believe that I deserve that. I don't take it. When somebody says things similar to me, because I've had that too. I got look at you've done this. I always say to them, stop. Just stop. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I have done them. I've worked my ass off to do them. So I always say, like, yes, are there people in this world that are lucky enough to not have to work really hard to get a lot of good things? Yes, there are people that are born with incredible wealth. They might have a lot of money because it's passed on to them. But even in those instances, often they're working very hard in the future. Not always, but often. Things rarely happen just for the sake of them happening. They do, but I don't like to play the outlier game. I don't like to play the game of, well, look at this person. Look at this person. Stop. That's not average. That's not what happens with most people. It doesn't happen with most people, and it doesn't happen most of the time. The vast majority of time, things have a tendency to work like this. I love how you said, I'm going to ask you this. I love how you said relentlessness. If you want good things to happen, then you have to be willing to make them happen, even if sometimes things are a struggle.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, it kind of goes back to the idea of controlling the variables that you can. This year was the happiest year of my life. It was also one of the most challenging. But in the decade leading up to this year, I felt like I was living in a slump where nothing was going the way that I wanted it to. You know, relationships, work, opportunities, extracurriculars, like all the things that I was striving for, I just kept coming up short. It would be like close but no cigar. There's like this Bible verse, and it's like, perhaps you're created for such time as this. And people love that when they're winning. They're like, yes, like I was made for this moment. Like things are going so well. Like, yay, me. It's a big verse. It's Esther 4:14. It's a big verse, like in the pageant community. And it's really easy to like lean into that when everything is going your way. But I felt like I was living in the perhaps not. I was like, perhaps this is not my moment. This is not the time I was made for. And that's why everything is so bad all the time. Like, I'm just in a slump. Like, I'm working so hard. I'm doing all the right things. Like, I'm trying to like create impact and positivity around me, but it just doesn't feel like it's coming to fruition. And it feels like I just keep like hitting dead ends. And so that's kind of where like the preparation, the prayer piece comes in, where I was like, okay, in 2023, January 2023, I like said this prayer and I was like, I want these three things. I want to get into this fellowship program. I want to win Miss DC, and I want to apply to school and get into school. And I don't want to have to pay for that education. And I was like super specific. And I said that prayer. And then I spent the entire year preparing myself to be in a position where those things could come to me and I'd be prepared for them. So I took the GRE 4 times. So I practiced my interview, I practiced my talent. I was out in the gym like every day, like getting myself into a place where I was physically, mentally, and emotionally prepared to take on the job of Miss DC. I applied for that fellowship. I did everything they asked me to do. And then it all kind of wrapped up in this piece where I became Miss DC. I got into that fellowship and I got my MBA fully funded. And it was like everything that I'd been praying for happened because one, I knew that I was being very specific and intentional with those asks. I knew that I wasn't like, I want to become a NASA rocket scientist. Like, I cannot do math. I can do math. I don't do math well right now. Let's reframe that.
Good. I
I
like
can do
that.
math. I don't do math well right now. It is not my strength. And so asking God to make me an astronaut would have been a reach. But asking God to help me stay motivated to prepare for this GRE, to take this high school math test, to get a high enough score to warrant a full tuition scholarship is not that much of a reach. And so I knew that my goals were things that were kind of in line with the way my life was going, but they were also things that I was willing to work for. And so this year was a lot of that work and that prayer over the last decade of these rejections coming into a time where then I was created for that moment. It was my Esther 4:14 year. And I did reap the benefits of that labor. And now it's like, okay, I prepared and I understand like how I got to this place. And it didn't just happen to me. Like, I didn't just wake up and all these magical things happened and came true. I was very intentional about those asks. And I also knew that I was on the right track of what I was asking for and what I was preparing for because I had been rejected by so many other things.
Mm. What is Esther 4:14?
So the verse is, perhaps you were created for such a time as this. And people love to lean into it when
I'll have
something
to write
goes
that down.
well. When you get your promotion, when you meet the love of your life, when things are up here, people lean into that verse. And yet, what about the perhaps not? What about the times where it wasn't your moment? What do you do then? That is what I had to figure out over the last decade. From the time I turned 16 and I had that heart attack to the time that I was about 26 going on 27, my life was a series of no's. Some things worked out. That doesn't mean that good things didn't happen to me. Lots of good things happened to me. I went to American University. I ran 4 years of Division I track and cross country. I'm still alive. We managed my condition. I'm doing really well. I built an insane network in DC that has just opened a lot of opportunities for me. But the things that I wanted, my romantic life, my connections with my family, my friendships, like those things were not really there over that decade. Like those things were in limbo. Those things were struggles. Those things were growing. I had to really work on those things and build those things. I didn't get the jobs that I wanted, like I wasn't getting the jobs that I wanted or in with the right crowds that I thought I wanted to be in. Like I wasn't having access to the things that I thought that I wanted during that decade. It was a lot of no's. But I view those no's now as redirection towards the things that were for me. I was going to go to law school. I was going to go to law school. And I was studying for the LSAT for years during that 10-year period. And I just couldn't seem to get the scores that I needed, or I just couldn't seem to figure out which law school was the right path for me. And then I realized that law wasn't my calling anyway. I'm a businesswoman. That is where I will make my impact, is in the business community. And so that rejection, those no's, all that was just preparing me to realize that the MBA, where it was a much easier to get yes in terms of I got my scores, I got into the fellowship program that helped me apply, I got into schools. Every school I got into offered me full tuition. That was a very clear yes to me that this was my path. But these things don't just happen. They come with a lot of rejection and redirection and understanding where you are supposed to be. And that's the part that I think that we kind of miss sometimes when all the good things are happening at once. I had a banner year. I had an amazing year where a lot of doors opened, a lot of phenomenal things happened to me, a lot of phenomenal people came into my life. But that was after a decade. We're talking 10 years of nothing going the way that I had expected it to, or the way that I hoped for it to go. And that is okay. And so a lot of people ask me, how did you keep your faith? How did you keep trying? How did you not get into that rut zone, that, woe is me area that we were talking about earlier? And for me, it was that I just believed that I was going to figure it out. I just believed that there had to be something for me, because I believe that we all were made for something bigger than ourselves. And sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to figure out what that is.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, super articulate and touching on so many things. I also believe that it's your attitude.
Yeah, it's important to have that, self-confidence and have that, belief and have, that faith that, things will work out the way they're supposed to. And it's easier said than done. And it's a daily thing where I have to, choose to intentionally, reframe that narrative in my own head. But the outcome is that you're more open to exploration and opportunities, and you're more willing to try new things. You're more willing to get a little uncomfortable to see what happens. And so that's really the best thing that you can do, and the best thing that I can offer in my 28 years of life is the advice of just be okay with things not going exactly how you wanted them to. It's a good thing to be intentional. It's a good thing to plan, but also know that I want to be the CEO of Team USA. That might actually not at all be where I land, but I'll land somewhere in that vicinity, I think, because I'm so specific with my asks. and I'm so specific with my goals. And so specificity and flexibility, that's the key to finding yourself in the places where you want to be.
Yes, I agree. I think that was great. And I'll also add that I love how you mentioned being CEO of an organization, but then also following up, but that might not be it either. I think what happens with so many people is they are so fixated on the one thing that they miss the umbrella effect. And if you don't know what the umbrella effect, it just simply means that I could just relate it to what Judy said. So Judy said, the CEO of what organization?
Team USA,
Okay,
Olympic team, Paralympic
so
team.
so CEO of Team USA. So let's say that is let's say that's the top of the umbrella. That's the pinnacle. But there are so many things close to that that would probably still be okay.
Yes.
And that's what people oftentimes lose sight about. So I often think about this. I will tell you this. When Judy was in high school, people would say, "Oh my God, she's so good at this and she's so good at that," and I would always push back. Always, I would always push back. I would always say, "Yes, yep, really good at it, but a freaking hard worker." Like I would always say, like, "Yes, very good, very talented, can sing, is strong, is fit, is smart, but she's worked her butt off to get there. Like this isn't magically come out of the sky. She's had, and I think that's something that is oftentimes forgotten. It goes back to what you said earlier: is people see all the success, but they don't see all the work. They see the end game. It is the process that matters most. The process to getting to be CEO of Team USA, that won't happen unless you do certain things to make it happen, or at the very least, encourage them to happen.
Yes.
So I will leave people with this, and then I'll have Judy do a little bit of closing stuff. There are going to be hurdles along the way, whatever you're doing. Whether you're just starting, you're the middle way through, or close to the end, there's always going to be hurdles. And you have opportunities. Your opportunities are this: you can try to run over the hurdle, you can run around the hurdle, you can jump over the hurdle, or not try to get the hurdle at all. All of them are opportunities. It depends on which one you choose to do. And there is no exact right answer because we're all unique and different. But it is taking those opportunities that are most important. Judy, you want to finish with? Well, I wanted to ask you this. Tell me one word to describe you.
Dynamic.
Okay, good. I agree. Tell me something. Pick one thing that you're most proud of.
Ooh. Okay. Turning a really traumatic, life-changing diagnosis into life-changing and life-saving work.
Okay. Um, why don't you tell the audience maybe a meaningful closing statement that you'd like to make?
Yeah. Okay. So I think in closing, I'll say that what we talked about today is kind of the way in which I live my life. And it's easier to listen and kind of think about, oh, that must be nice or that makes sense, but it's really hard to implement. And so in closing, I would say that we don't have to try to uproot who we are and the way that we view the world in one night. I think that there's a lot of, nuances and things that go into that. And so I would just say that it all starts with like small changes. Find one thing that you can do. If it's changing the way that you talk about yourself, great. If it's, trying to find a cause that moves you and moving towards that to create your own, social impact in your life, like that's great too. But I genuinely believe that we were all made for something bigger than ourselves. So find what moves you, move towards it, be kind to yourself, give yourself grace, and just know that things will work out the way they're supposed to.
Good stuff. I don't know what to say. Uh, Obviously, having Judy on, I knew having her on was going to be amazing. just so incredibly articulate, wise for somebody who's still so young. Amazing life experiences that I think have added to the conversation. But this was one of those podcasts with, I actually went off script because normally I have questions that I would ask each person, and I didn't do that because we were just talking, which made it seem so much more authentic and real, which I think is critical no matter what happens. Again, if you'd like to be on the podcast, please reach out. I think hearing different voices is critical in our world. You don't have to agree. We can disagree with respect and kindness and empathy and compassion. Totally fine. You can reach me on all the social media things. You can reach me at my website. If you'd like to get in touch with Judy, I'll have her contact information as well listed, which I definitely think you should do. Reach out to her for anything. She's incredibly talented in so many ways she didn't even talk about. But I want you to do the closing here, Jude, because I forgot what it is. Do me a favor. Can you just say to the audience what Esther 414 is?
Yes. So Esther 4:14, perhaps you were created for such a time as this.
There we go, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Stay On. Oh, before I forget, I've called Judy Doctor for years. I don't know. I don't know why. I think it was because you were. I think it was because you were good at everything.
No, it's because I was a know-it-all back in the day.
Oh,
So you'd
yeah.
be like, okay, doctor. I'd be like, did you know? Like a nerd, and you'd be like, okay, doctor.
Things haven't changed. Everybody, thank you again. I really hope that you got. Well, there's no way. I don't hope you definitely got some stuff out of today's episode. Thank you again for all you do, Doctor. Stay on. Thanks again.